Most people think that mastering emotions means becoming cold, distant, or uncaring. But that's not it at all. Mastering emotions isn't about shutting down your feelings. It's about not being ruled by them. It's about taking back control. And that shift, that mindset, changes everything. Let's start with this. The emotionless man is not heartless. He's disciplined. His silence isn't weakness, it's sovereignty. Read that again, because this flips the narrative society has fed us. We're told that silence means you're indifferent, that if you're not reactive, you must not care. But the truth is, most of the time, silence is power. Stillness is strategy. The man who appears emotionless has just trained himself. He's felt the storm and learned not to let it move him. That's not cold, that's control. Now, that doesn't mean he doesn't feel anything. It means he refuses to let those feelings own him. Here's what most people get wrong. They believe emotional detachment is weakness or avoidance, but it's not. It's choosing not to be dragged. Not every opinion deserves a reaction. Not every feeling deserves a response. That's discipline. That's maturity. And you want to talk about real strength? Most men live at the mercy of fortune, at the mercy of affection, timing, chemistry, and approval. But the emotionless man? He doesn't live at mercy. He lives by design. Let that sink in. This isn't about being robotic or devoid of human connection. It's about not being dependent on it. Most people drift through life like leaves in the wind. One compliment lifts them up, one insult crushes them. A girl's attention validates them. Her absence destroys them. That's not living, that's being controlled. But the man who lives by design, he builds his own architecture. He writes his own script. He feels, but he filters. He experiences, but he doesn't explode. There's a quote from Spinoza that captures this perfectly. Understanding our emotions diminishes their power over us. That's the root of this entire mindset. Once you understand how emotions work, how they're triggered, how they rise, and how they pass, you start to own them. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop blaming and start building. Here's the kicker. You weren't betrayed by her. You were betrayed by your ignorance of how emotions actually work. Now that might sting, but it's the truth. Most of us, especially as men, were never taught how to process emotions. We were either told to suppress them or to act on them. Neither works. Suppression creates internal chaos. Overreaction creates external chaos. What we need is mastery, because emotional ignorance is what leads to destruction. It's why a breakup feels like death. It's why one bad day can spiral into a week. It's why people ghost us and we think it's the end of the world. It's why we chase, beg, overthink, spiral, because we haven't trained ourselves to stand still in discomfort. But here's the thing. Growth lives in that discomfort. Not in escaping it, not in numbing it, but in sitting with it, learning from it. The man who gets this, who really gets this, becomes unstoppable. The man who masters his emotions becomes untouchable. Not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to be owned. That's it. That's the goal. Not apathy, not detachment, but sovereignty. The kind of sovereignty where you don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to chase what left or beg for what's not meant for you. Because you've built yourself to a point where the outside world doesn't decide how you feel inside. You know what's ironic? Most people think emotional mastery is about isolating yourself. It's not. It actually makes your relationships stronger. When you're not reacting out of fear, insecurity, jealousy, or pain, you show up with presence. You listen better. You speak clearer. You love deeper. Because you're not trying to get something. You're just being. Whole, centered, free. You're no longer operating from a deficit. And when you stop operating from a deficit, everything changes. The way you handle rejection changes. The way you handle conflict changes. The way you handle life changes. But make no mistake, this isn't easy. Mastery doesn't come from reading one quote or watching one video. This is a daily discipline. It's the micro decisions, choosing silence instead of snapping back, choosing breath instead of blame, choosing purpose over pettiness. You'll be tested. A woman will push you to see if you'll break. A friend will betray you and watch if you'll fold. Life will throw you chaos and wait to see if you respond like everyone else or like someone who's built different. And when that moment comes, because it will, you have two choices: fall back into your old patterns or rise with awareness. Because once you see it, once you see how reactive most people are, how addicted they are to emotional highs and lows, you can't unsee it. Let's go deeper. We live in a world where emotional reactivity is normalized. Drama is entertainment. Rage is monetized. Insecurity is marketed as vulnerability. And if you don't play along, if you're calm, collected, measured, they call you cold, emotionless, or detached. But that's projection. It's people who haven't learned self-regulation trying to shame those who have. See, the man who doesn't react immediately isn't numb. He's assessing. He's choosing his words with precision. He's not silent because he has nothing to say. He's silent because he knows that not everything deserves a response. He's playing chess, not checkers. And there's something incredibly powerful in that. Because the world is loud. Emotions are loud. People yell to be heard, scream to be seen, post for validation. But the man who doesn't need to scream, the one who sits back, observes, and moves when it matters, that man carries a different kind of weight. He moves with gravity. That's what we're talking about here. The quiet power of emotional intelligence. The calm intensity of someone who knows himself. The rare energy of a man who doesn't just feel, he understands. Understanding is everything. Understanding your triggers, understanding your tendencies, understanding where your pain comes from. Not so you can justify it, but so you can manage it. Because emotions aren't enemies. They're signals. They're messages from your internal world. Anger, that's usually a boundary being crossed. Sadness, that's usually an unmet need. Jealousy, often rooted in fear of inadequacy. But if you don't take the time to understand them, they'll hijack you. You'll lash out instead of listening. You'll implode instead of integrating. You'll spiral instead of standing strong. This is why most men collapse under emotional pressure. Not because they're weak, but because they were never taught how to hold themselves through it. And that brings us to something critical: emotional weightlifting. Think about it. If you've never been to a gym, you wouldn't expect to walk in and bench 200 pounds on day one. You'd tear something. You'd quit. Emotional strength is the same. If you've never trained it, if you've always avoided hard feelings or exploded whenever they showed up, how do you expect to carry heavy emotional situations with grace? You have to train. And that training starts small. It starts with sitting in discomfort for just a few more seconds than you're used to. It starts with not sending that angry text, not chasing after someone who pulled away, not giving in to the knee-jerk reaction to fix, force, or flee. It's choosing to breathe, to pause instead. The pause is powerful. That tiny moment between feeling and reacting, that's where freedom lives. It's where maturity grows. It's where you go from being a victim of your feelings to the master of your mind. But here's what's tricky. The world will test you the moment you try. The second you decide to level up emotionally, life throws situations at you that challenge the very thing you're trying to grow. You try to be more patient, someone will push your buttons. You try to detach from validation, someone will ghost you. You try to stop seeking approval, suddenly people will withdraw theirs. That's not coincidence. That's the test. The old you would have broken, the new you breathes. The old you would have begged, the new you lets go. The old you would have spiraled. The new you studies what the feeling is trying to teach. Because that's what emotional mastery is. It's not about being a robot. It's about becoming a student of your inner world. You don't shut emotions down. You interrogate them. You don't shame yourself for feeling. You question where the feeling is rooted. You don't let the storm sweep you away. You anchor yourself through it. And the more you do that, the stronger you become. Emotionally, mentally, energetically. And let me say this clearly, the most attractive trait a man can carry is emotional stability. Not money, not looks, not status. Those things fade, fluctuate, fall away. But a man who doesn't flinch under pressure, a man who can hold himself and others when things get chaotic, that's rare, that's magnetic. And it's not just attractive to others, it's attractive to yourself. Because when you start to embody this kind of control, you feel different in your own skin. You start to trust yourself in ways you never did before. You stop fearing conflict. You stop fearing loss. You stop fearing uncertainty. You become untouchable. Not because life doesn't hit you anymore, but because you've trained your mind not to crumble. You've trained your heart not to chase. You've trained your spirit not to beg for peace, but to be peace. And when you reach that place, even if just for a moment, everything gets quieter. You stop needing to prove things. You stop needing to be chosen. You stop needing to be understood by everyone because you finally understand yourself. You know what your values are. You know what your boundaries are. You know what your emotional patterns are. And with that knowledge, with that inner clarity, you move through the world with a kind of confidence that can't be faked. You don't chase peace. You carry it. You don't search for validation. You generate it. You don't rely on emotions to dictate your worth. You anchor yourself in purpose, practice, and principles. That's the new standard. And yes, it's hard. Yes, you'll mess up. Yes, you'll get pulled back into old patterns sometimes. But every time you notice it, every time you catch the spiral, every time you pause instead of reacting, you win. You train, you grow, you shift. And over time, those small wins add up until one day you look in the mirror and realize you're not the same man you were before. Bring it home. This journey you're on toward emotional mastery, toward sovereignty, it's not linear. You'll have days where you feel unshakable and others where it feels like everything's falling apart. That's normal. Growth isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about direction. And every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you're evolving. Quietly, powerfully. But here's the real challenge. You'll grow faster than most of the people around you. Projection, codependency, all the patterns you used to be part of, and it can be lonely. Because you'll want to help them. You'll want to explain. But most people aren't ready. They're not interested in mastery. They want comfort, familiarity, predictability, even if it hurts. That's why emotional mastery isn't loud. It's not a performance. It's not about convincing others to change. It's about you holding your center, no matter what's happening around you. Think of it like this. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, wind howling, rain slamming. But inside, stillness. That's you. Not because the storm stopped, but because you stopped giving it permission to define your state. You learned how to separate what's happening outside from what's happening inside. That's next level, because most people blur that line. If their partner's upset, they're upset. If the job is uncertain, they collapse. If they get ghosted, they spiral. But once you've built this inner foundation, when you've practiced regulating your nervous system, questioning your thoughts, sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it, you're no longer at the mercy of the world. You're living by design. And let's not pretend this makes you better than anyone. It doesn't. It just means you're choosing a path most people avoid. The path of depth, the path of ownership, the path of responsibility. Because here's the truth, emotional mastery isn't about never being hurt. It's about not making your hurt someone else's responsibility to heal. It's about saying, yes, this triggered me, and now I get to sit with it, understand it, and alchemize it. It's not that the emotionless man doesn't get betrayed. He does. But he knows the real betrayal wasn't her leaving. It was him not knowing how emotions work. It was him outsourcing his peace. It was him building his identity on external variables. Once he sees that, really sees it, he never makes that mistake again. Because the pain becomes the teacher. The heartbreak becomes the fire. The chaos becomes the catalyst. That's how warriors are made. Not in comfort, not in applause, but in solitude, in repetition. You want to be unbreakable? Then train for it. Start today. The next time you feel jealousy rising, don't numb it, name it. The next time you feel anger pulsing, don't explode, examine it. The next time someone disrespects you, don't collapse, clarify your boundaries and move. Mastery isn't flashy, it's boring. Daily reps. It's waking up and choosing. I will not let the world dictate how I feel today. I will choose my response. And eventually, that calm becomes your default. That confidence becomes second nature. That awareness becomes your compass. You stop playing games. You stop chasing closure. You stop needing to explain your peace to people who profit from your chaos. You just live, anchored, focused, free. And you begin to attract differently. You attract partners who don't need to test your worth because they've done their own work. You attract opportunities that align because you're no longer operating from lack. You attract friendships that challenge you, not drain you. Because now your standard is different. You've stopped settling for cheap highs and started seeking deep truths. You've stopped asking, how do I get people to like me? And started asking, how do I become someone I respect? That's a powerful shift, and it creates a ripple effect. Because when one man rises in awareness, he gives others permission to do the same. He shows his friends what presence looks like. He teaches his son what real strength feels like. He leads not by force, but by example. And that's legacy. Not the cars, not the status, not the followers, but the energy you carry, the calm you create, the peace you pass on. So if you take nothing else from this, remember this. The man who masters his emotions becomes untouchable. Not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to be owned. That is your North Star. Because there is no freedom like emotional freedom. There is no power like self-control. There is no love like the one you give yourself when you stop outsourcing your worth. And once you taste that, there's no going back. So stay in the work, stay in the discipline, stay in the stillness, because everything you're looking for, all the love, clarity, peace, and strength, it's already inside you. You just have to stop running from it and start returning to it, over and over again. Until your silence speaks louder than your words, until your peace becomes unshakable, until your presence becomes your power. That's mastery, that's sovereignty, and that's where your real life begins.